Hey, good friends, welcome to Ask It with Pastor Danny, a Christian response to questions about faith. Yes, a Christian response to questions about faith. Now, one of the most common practice carried out by a significant number of Christians across the globe, especially at the beginning of every year, is the practice of prayer and fasting. Well, I'm sure we can all agree that this is one area in our Christian faith which is filled with so many questions that require us to give a response to. Is fasting for me? Is fasting compulsory? Which one is the right type of fasting? How long can I fast for? These are some of the many questions that are raised in the area of prayer and fasting. And I'm really excited today that on this first series of Ask It, we're going to be looking at some of the questions that are being asked concerning prayer and fasting. And in this first episode of prayer and fasting, we're going to be looking at this one question: what is fasting? So let's jump in and answer that question. What then is fasting? Fasting in general is abstinence from food and drink for a specific reason. It is abstinence from food and drink for a specific reason. For example, in the medical field, usually before having a general anesthetic, you will not be allowed anything to eat or to drink. In other words, you're going to be asked to go on a fast for a specific period of time before the procedure is carried out. Why do they ask you to go on a fast? Because when the anesthetic is used in your body's reflexes are temporarily suspended. In other words, they're temporarily stopped. Now, if it happens that there is food or drink in your stomach, there is a high risk of vomiting or bringing up food into your throat, thereby ending up with food particles in the wrong parts of your body, like your lungs. There's always a reason connected to fasting in the medical field. But guess what? Christians do practice the same kind of fasting. What then is the difference? This begs us to answer the question: what then is fasting in Christendom? Fasting is a willful practice of abstaining from food and drink for a specific period of time for spiritual purposes. Can I repeat that? Fasting for us as Christians, it is a willful practice of abstaining from food and drink for a specific period of time for spiritual purposes. And in the coming episodes, I'm going to be giving you reasons of fasting as spelled out in the scriptures or in the Bible. But for now, let's build up context for prayer and fasting. Now, in Christendom, fasting or the abstinence from food and drink ought to be viewed and practiced in the context of prayer. Very, very important. Fasting ought to be viewed and practiced in the context of prayer. Why is that important? It is simply because fasting is an extension of prayer. You need to get that at all costs. Fasting is actually an extension or an arm of prayer. So fasting should not be a standalone practice. As a matter of fact, fasting by itself is not equal to prayer. You need to know that. Fasting by itself, or in the absence of prayer, it is not equal to prayer. That's why I'm simply saying to you, fasting is an extension of prayer. In other words, the practice of prayer should be influenced by our position on prayer. Very, very important. Now, if fasting is an extension of prayer, what then is prayer? Prayer is a communication or a conversation with God. And this communication involves making petitions. It involves fellowship. It involves worship. It involves listening to God, or involves meditation. Now, when you look at all these different aspects to prayer that build up the right context for fasting, you'll soon learn that the practice of prayer and fasting is actually an outward expression of one's total dependence on God. The practice of prayer and fasting is then an outward expression of one's total dependence on God. So just to summarize, what then is fasting in Christendom? Fasting is a willful, underline that word willful. It is a willful practice of abstaining from food and drink for a specific period of time for spiritual purposes. Thank you so much for tuning in to Ask It with Pastor Danny, a Christian response to questions about faith. Now, if you happen to have any questions you would like me to give a response to, please do feel free to get in touch with me via any one of our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. I'll be more than happy to consider giving a response to those questions. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, I want to kindly ask you just to hit the subscribe button. And if you're on Facebook or Instagram, make sure that you do follow us so that you don't miss out on any of the episodes that we're going to be publishing in the coming future. So until we meet again, may heaven keep smiling at you. In Jesus' name, God bless. Bye.